During my life, I've been rejected by multiple firms, which could be, consulting, investment banking, private equity, or other typologies of firms. And I think that I have identified the key mistakes that at least I have personally committed during these recruitment processes. And today I would like to highlight those mistakes so that probably some of you can avoid this type of mistakes. So the first mistake was the online applications. And while I consider extremely valuable these online platforms such as LinkedIn, Indeed, etc., it's also very obvious that these platforms are very saturated. So there are a lot of people that use these platforms to get hired, and there are obviously few companies that actually are able to hire people, especially if you're aiming at top tier companies. And so what you will encounter in these platforms is that once, for example, a big corporation or an important firm launches a new job application or a new job position, that job position will receive hundreds, if not thousands, of applications in just one day, in just a few hours. And so, if you think about it, it becomes really difficult to compete if you don't have a top tier curriculum, a top tier profile. So whenever you are approaching these type of platforms, it's very important that you consider them as a strategic asset rather than a standard way to get into the world of into the professional world. For me, it was private equity. For you, maybe it could be something else. But it's still extremely important to consider these platforms as strategic assets. So to network for networking, for showing a personal brand, to connect, to discover, and then also to apply. But it's very important that you don't consider it as your first and most standard way to get hired. The second mistake that I committed is that I didn't have a clear target. And if I think about it now, if I had to, give a suggestion or advice to an ambitious student who's trying to break into private equity or consulting or investment banking or other, top tier careers, is the first, advice that I would tell him is to first of all have an extremely clear goal, an extremely clear vision of where you want to go, and so which company you want to work for. Why is that? When do you want to work for it? Do you have a methodology that you're trying to implement to actually get to the goal? So not having a clear target is actually a mistake that I've made during the last few years. And for example, I was in when I was studying management engineering at the University of Palermo, I was a little bit confused about what I wanted to do next with my life. And so I think that entering into the professional world with any type of position for me was, for example, consulting. I've worked in consulting in Palermo, but with clients in Milan. And for me, that was extremely useful because at least I understood what I didn't want to do. And so once you actually get into the professional world, you have a much clearer vision of what is the professional world, and so what are the possible career options for you, and what are the pros, the cons, and that experience was first of all extremely educational. I learned a lot, both technically and behaviorally, and also I got to understand what I actually wanted to do and where I wanted to go. The third mistake that I made is not bringing value to the companies, and this is something that I understood later in my university journey. I was applying kind of everywhere to banks, to PE funds, to firms, to consultancy firms, etc. But my profile, my curriculum was not considered as a top tier. I was competing with Bocconi students, with LSE students, with top tier students from all over the world. And I think that once I switched my mentality from a student mentality to a professional mentality, this is where I actually made the big jump and enter into the world of private equity, which was what I wanted to do. And I've committed this mistake several times, entering into an interview process, thinking that I just had to sell myself and showing that my profile is actually good, and that I studied a lot, my grades were good, that I speak a lot of languages, that I had these hobbies, but now that I am a business owner, I understand that if you present yourself to these firms with this type of attitude, it's very difficult that you will be able to at least compete with those other top tier students, because those students have actually studied finance at top business schools. They had banking internships or internships at the top firms in Europe, and so they have a technical and practical experience that is very hard to compare with yours if you don't have any. And so in my case, what I could do was to start acting like a private equity analyst, like a private equity professional, and bringing value freely to the company so that they could be able to understand what my value was and how I was actually able to work for them in a quality way. The fourth mistake is the wrong technical prep. I've entered into too many interview processes not being too prepared technically from a technical point of view, and this was a mistake because I missed many opportunities. These are interviews that are extremely competitive, not only on the access side, but also during the same interview process. So you have to be really prepared to understand and to pass to follow the questions that you will receive from top managers or top directors, top managing partners. They are people who have lived the business game for several years, for decades. So they know a lot about business and finance in my case. So it was, very, unprofessional to come in there with low technical prep. And this is something that obviously, with now at 25 years old, if I could go back to the Giovanni of 22, 21 years old, I would, improve much more my technical preparation, and I will show that I'm actually able to do the job. The fifth mistake is that I've made is having the wrong story. And this is extremely important if you don't have a perfect curriculum. If you don't have a perfect curriculum, you need to, create and tell a story that is appealing to these firms. Because if not, they will obviously prefer those students who have a more linear, a more comprehensive story. So they went to finance school, top grades, banking internships, and now they're ready. If you don't provide a story, a compelling stories to these funds or to these firms, it's very hard that you will be able to actually that you will be taken into consideration, because you need to show that everything that you've done was actually done for them, so that every piece of your story actually brought you there to the interview processes, so in front of them. And that shows that you're able to first of all tell a story, which is extremely important. It shows that you have a lot of interpersonal skills, and it shows that you are the best candidate for them, because every piece of your story was actually a fit for this type of position. And I think that I've committed this mistake several times. Well, obviously, also during the networking phase, if you don't come there with a compelling story, it's also very hard to make the person trust you. So I think that I've committed this mistake a lot of times. But mm, I think that all five mistakes come from considering private equity as a normal job, and unfortunately, it isn't. This could also be the good side of private equity, because it's extremely unique, but you need to approach it as a real professional and trying to avoid the mistakes that I've made.